now we want to introduce a new segment we like to call Thank the Maker. For this segment, we're going to be diving into some of the creative masterminds behind the Star Wars universe and show our appreciation for their efforts and work. This week, we're going to be going a little unconventional for our first pick with the friend and longtime collaborator of George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. Robbie, why is Spielberg our first spotlight on Thank the Maker?
So Spielberg, well, with Thank the Maker, like you said, we're going to be diving into a lot of just random behind the scenes facts. It could go from just props or just what happened on set this day or whatever. And Spielberg is really, really, really deep behind the scenes in Star Wars, but a lot of it, if not 90% of it, 100% of it almost, honestly, is just uncredited. It's not really brought up. He's not in the credits for the films. He doesn't show up, but he worked on them. So I kind of wanted to I think it was a good time to spotlight George's best friend. I mean, first and foremost, he's been there since before Star Wars. I mean, he was as George's best friend. He was the guy who introduced George to John Williams. A lot of people know that, but I mean, there's no Star Wars without John Williams. So right off the bat, thank you for that introduction, Steven.
Right.
And then Steven is always kind of by George's side throughout their entire careers. I mean, they took a vacation to Hawaii when the original came out, and George did not want to have to do with any news, any press, nothing. Like, he was nervous. Took a vacation, and I mean, that vacation then birthed Indiana Jones. And who's in Indiana Jones but Harrison Ford? There's that direct connection. And just throughout the films and as these things move on, you'll find little callbacks to each other and their works. So, like, if you want to jump to Indiana Jones, R2 and 3PO are engraved in a wall where the Ark of the Covenant is. So cool. You want to jump over to E.T., Yoda is a costume on Halloween, and they're also playing with like the original Kenner figures within the film. Fast forward a little bit, he was the first, or one of the first choices to direct Return of the Jedi. Ultimately,
which would have been wild.
I can't imagine. That would have probably been my favorite Star Wars film, and I'm not a huge fan of Return of the Jedi that we have, which is just a mind-blowing alternate universe thing to think of. But I mean, you flash forward to the next Star Wars film, and he was offered the Phantom Menace. So he turned that down too. But George kept going back to him for, do you want to direct? Do you want to direct? And he turned down Phantom Menace, but we all know that E.T.'s species, Azogians, I think. I just called them the ET species. I think they're called Azogians or something. Anyway,
that's beyond my knowledge.
They're in the Senate in the Phantom Menace. A lot of people's favorite Easter eggs, but an Easter egg that people don't know that is on top of that Easter egg. It's like you get two eggs in one. I have to just look. The senator's name is Senator Grebleeps, which is just Spielberg mashed up. So the actual senator for the ET species is Spielberg himself. I guess. But and then, like, those are all like the little things, kind of like just little relationships and things that led up behind the scenes up until where Spielberg actually like gets his feet wet, jumps into working on Star Wars in Revenge of the Sith. So he was behind a lot of the moments in that film. And he's uncredited. You only get the mention on a lot of the Blu-ray and the old DVD features, the making ofs and the interviews and the documentaries and stuff. You get little
Yeah.
tidbits from George here and there and whatnot. But he had a lot to do in that film, and it ultimately is because he just made a phone call and to George and said, "I'm bored. I have nothing to do." That's and George is like,
Incredible.
"Okay,
I'll come work on this movie.
here's ILM. Go hang out with them." That's pretty much what it was. And so he did storyboards for a lot of like really big moments. He did a lot of the Obi-Wan and Grievous bike chase. Um, that was more
Fantastic
so that
sequence.
was more so I think a lot of that was left in storyboards though, because I don't think they ended up using the full chase scene that they had done. I think a lot of the Spielberg specific things weren't necessarily heavily featured in the final cut,
I know. Mhm.
but two of his biggest ones are both take place, or I can't even say biggest because this is not even the cream of the crop, but Order 66, he specifically Ayla and Plo Koon's deaths. He was the one that was like open fire on Ayla, pull back, let the plant cover her, just keep firing
Yeah.
on him. He directed that scene, and he also kind of directed Plo's death. He was the one that said, "Let them be." Or Plo thinks that these clones are his escort, his wingmen, his guardians through Cato Nemoidia, and he said, "Let's flip it on them." And now all of a sudden, like, I mean, that's the whole plot of Order 66, but the way he had them act as escorts and then just kind of the downfall of Plo, he directed that scene. He also had to work in 3 lightsaber fights. He basically
As
was
well.
the second version, the second version slash the final version we get of Mace versus Sidious.
Mhm.
Um, Apparently Anakin was there the whole time or a majority of the fight and just kind of stood around there and it was kind of like viewed as like a backstabbing almost, like Anakin always knew he was going to do this, and Spielberg told George, he was like, "Well, isn't this all for Padme? What happened to her?" So they kind of reworked it to get Anakin out till the end, and now you get the
Mm.
beautiful scene of with the sunset and everything, like no words
Yeah.
spoken and all the tears seen. And so he had a hand in changing that scene, and he also did a majority of the work on Yoda versus Palpatine. I don't know of specifics, but I do know that he's credited for a nice chunk of that fight. But I do
Yeah.
know he's also credited for from when Anakin and Obi-Wan are on like the bridge overhanging the lava,
Yeah.
and from there to like their fight surfing on the lava. That's like his chunk of
So
that battle, of
so
that
good.
lightsaber fight. So
Iconic. Like,
yeah,
come on.
like if I could only wish for a full Spielberg film of Star Wars, but the little bits he gave us in Revenge of the Sith are probably the best bits. So the film itself. So and to top it off, he was the one who suggested J.J. Abrams for The Force Awakens.
Mm.
So
That tracks too.
yeah, so that's kind of the little he's had a pretty big hand in Star Wars. Whether I mean, for a lot of the time, it was small little Easter eggs and connections across films and just playful fun within the world of Hollywood and movies. And then he
Mhm.
ultimately ended up just getting his foot involved and foot in the door. I mean, he doesn't need a foot in the door, but for lack of a better description, he
Yeah.
stepped his way into ILM and just kind of gave us cinema as always. So that's
We love Steven
yeah,
Spielberg.
we're kicking off Thank the Maker with the Maker's best friend.